In a muddy landscape, a man wearing a red metal suit holds a large axe. The man in the reddish outfit says he's always wanted to know one thing and asks if green tea in Japan is served free at the end of a meal. The injured person in front of him remains silent. The man then introduces himself as Rita and tells the injured person he will stay with him until he dies. A boy named Keiji, covered in sweat and lying on the bed, was turning the pages of a small book when he heard an announcement on the radio about the Bozo area. The announcement stated that it would be covered by a high-pressure system, bringing a clear and sunny day. It also warned everyone to be careful of the UV rays in the afternoon. In the room, Keiji suddenly sat up on the lower bunk, initially thinking it was just a dream. He checked his arm and felt sick, remembering the sensation of dying in the dream and losing his arm. There was another boy on the top bunk named Jin Yonobaru. Jin handed Keiji a page and asked him to sign it. Keiji, looking confused, mentioned that he had already signed one like it. However, Yonobaru urged him to sign it quickly, explaining that it was a confession about stealing booze from BX, and they were planning to steal more for a party that night. They would then turn in the confession signed by the dead person from their team after the battle, considering it a perfect plan. Keiji, still puzzled, continued reading the page, expressing that he knew the tradition but didn't fully understand it. He mentioned they were supposed to suit up that afternoon, but Yonobaru corrected him by lowering his head and looking at him. He stated they were going to party that night and roll out the next day. Hearing this, Keiji received a big shock as he had totally forgotten about it, making Yonobaru wonder if he was fine. Keiji looked at the book, having decided the previous night to read it instead of drinking. Yonobaru asked him to relax, noting that he knew Keiji was a bit nervous because it was his first battle. Still confused and wondering if it had just been a dream, Keiji admitted that he was a lot more freaked out than he thought he would be. He tried to calm himself down by reminding himself that he was a jacket soldier going into his first battle tomorrow. Mankind was currently in the midst of a strange war, not against other people, but against monsters known as mimics. No one knew where these creatures had come from or what they were, but it was clear they aimed to wipe out humanity. Adults often compared fighting these monsters to a sci-fi story, but for him, it had just been another day. This battle had been ongoing since he was a kid. To combat the mimics, the United Defense Force had been created, but the strenuous war had gradually worn them down. In the afternoon, the other candidates discussed Okinawa and concluded that it was now swarming with mimics. In Europe, Oceania, and Africa, humanity was slowly being hunted down, and a horde of mimics had finally begun an attack on Japan as well. The base flower line located on the Bozo Peninsula had been the front line of that battle. However, Japan had been the only industrial nation in the world capable of creating the composite armor for the battle jackets. To protect this capability, the army had sent a special military unit to their base, the US Special Forces led by Rita. Her team had been the only military unit in the world that had been consistently successful in the battle against the mimics. Keiji had been going to fight alongside this amazing team for the first time tomorrow. Meanwhile, Yonobaru, smiling, told Keiji to get himself home without shooting anyone in the back, adding that he would go crazy if he sweated about it too much. Keiji acknowledged this, and with a smirk, Yonobaru further remarked that the real weirdos were the guys who came out of battle with all their marbles. He pointed out Sarge, saying that Keiji should be like him, someone who had worked out his muscles so much that his brain had shrunk. Suddenly, Sarge, whose real name was Bartolome Farrell, appeared behind Yonobaru and said it sounded like Yonobaru needed some extra training. Yonobaru's expression disappeared for a second as he started sweating in fear, because Sarge was stronger, taller, and more muscular than anyone else in the room. He asked Yonobaru what he had said about his name. With a smile, Yonobaru saluted Bartolome and said he had just been telling Keiji that Bartolome's strong mind came from his regular daily training. Bartolome ignored him and announced in a strong tone that at 0900, the 17th Company was to fall in at the #1 training field. He instructed them to pass the word to the rest of the knuckleheads. Everyone looked at him in shock, wondering what this was all about. He angrily told them he couldn't hear, so they loudly acknowledged him. Bartolome then informed them that they had just had a surprise equipment inspection and found inadequacies with their gear. He explained that the US forces had arrived, which was why the base commander had been touchy. Yonobaru said from behind that it had nothing to do with him, and another candidate protested, saying it wasn't fair. However, Bartolome told them to give it up, saying they should have taken better care of their gear and left. Everyone wondered what they were going to make them do since they were rolling out tomorrow. Keiji guessed it would be physical training, which frustrated Yonobaru. After that, Keiji explained his dream to Yonobaru, leaving him in shock. He told Keiji that it wasn't funny at all. Keiji mentioned in his dream the punishment was 3 hours of ISO push-ups, which made Yonebaru tired already. Yonebaru expressed hope that Keiji's dream would not come true. In the bright afternoon sunlight, all the candidates were doing push-ups. Yonebaru angrily exclaimed that Keiji was damn right. Keiji responded that it wasn't his fault, though he considered the coincidence of his dream coming true. Spectators shouted at them to keep their backs straight and enjoy the moment. Meanwhile, Keiji, Yonebaru, and the candidates beside them who were doing ISO push-ups were completely covered in sweat and exhausted. Keiji noticed that the US Special Forces were present, and among them was a small girl who was the best jacket soldier in the world, Rita. They remained shocked after learning she was Rita, pointing out how small she was and that she was that full metal bitch who had been crushing all those mimics. Yonebaru advised Keiji to be careful and not to judge women by their looks. Keiji looked at her carefully, thinking, so she is the full metal bitch, but she looks more like a puppy. Meanwhile, Yonebaru mentioned that there was also a rumor that they were a propaganda unit designed to spread the use of new weapons and tactics. Keiji asked if they were just there for show. Yonebaru confirmed this, saying that's why it was more suitable for a woman to lead the unit. Keiji paused, wondering if he had seen her before. Nearby, Yonebaru noticed Keiji's long look and teased, "Do you like her?" Startled, Keiji turned and saw Rita watching him too, which made him blush with embarrassment. As Rita started walking towards them, he remained confused, wondering why she was coming towards them and hoped she did not come near him. Rita then stood in front of them and asked the general for permission to speak. The general asked what it was and she requested to join the training, which left everyone in shock. She explained that she had never experienced this kind of training in her platoon, and she would like to join and be part of the team so their operation tomorrow would be a success. The general gave her permission and Rita moved and took her position between Keiji and Yonebaru. In her ISO push-up position, Rita pointed out about Keiji that he had been staring at her. Keiji nervously denied it, but Rita said she was not used to people staring at her. Keiji apologized and explained that there was no specific reason for it. Nervously, he looked at her and thought she really looked like an ordinary girl, recalling her name and thinking, so she was Rita. After completing isometric push-ups, all the candidates headed to the taps to wash themselves. Keiji, while washing, reflected that the exercise had only lasted for an hour, yet in his dream he recalled enduring it for 3 hours. Suddenly, Yonebaru approached from behind, holding his head excitedly and exclaimed, "It's party time tonight." However, Keiji responded that he still felt strange, so he decided to stay in his bunk and read his book. Upon hearing this, Yonebaru was shocked and wondered what might be wrong with him. At night, Keiji lay on his bed reading a book. He noticed familiar lines, though he was certain he had never read this particular book before. Sitting up, he studied the page closely, speculating that perhaps Yonebaru had shared the story with him. Glancing out the window, he saw everyone enjoying the party. In his mind, he acknowledged that the next day he would face the mimics in battle alongside Rita. Closing the book, he reminded himself that survival was key. He must return home safely. Crossing his arms, he tried to calm his nerves, reassuring himself that it was just a dream, and he would make it back alive no matter what. The next day arrived and they prepared themselves along with their metal suits, all set for action. As they geared up, they heard an announcement from their leader. He informed them that they were embarking on a mission to Koto Iushi Island on the Ogasawara Island chain. With determination, everyone donned their metal suits, ready for what lay ahead. The leader emphasized the gravity of the situation, stating that if the mimics established their nest there, Tokyo could be crushed. The lives of 35 million people rested on their shoulders, including their own families and loved ones. With a resolute tone, he urged them to drive the mimics out and eradicate them. Boarding the cargo helicopter, they set course for Koto Iushi Island. After reaching the island, they took their positions with the machine guns, lying prone on the ground. Yonebaru and Keiji lay beside each other. Yonebaru told Keiji to calm down, explaining that their job was simple. They just needed to eliminate the mimics that the main force had let escape. Keiji acknowledged that, and then he thought to himself that this wasn't a dream or a drill. It was the real battlefield. Suddenly, Yonebaru alerted Keiji that the mimics were approaching. Keiji, feeling a bit shocked and nervous, realized the gravity of the situation. The actual battle was unfolding before them. They both started firing non-stop, but soon they realized that there were too many mimics. Yodobaru questioned what the others were doing and then urged Keiji to move out because staying there would make them sitting ducks. As they began to retreat, out of nowhere, one of the monsters attacked Yodobaru with a laser, causing his metal suit to burn. Keiji was in complete shock as he looked at him burning. Suddenly, another mimic appeared and attacked Keiji, burning his arm. Keiji, in intense pain, shouted repeatedly that it hurt, feeling in his brain that this might be the end. He might die now. As he started losing his senses, everything faded into blankness. He woke up suddenly on his bunk, holding the book and covered in sweat. Getting up, he looked at himself. His heart raced, wondering what had just happened. Then Yodobaru approached him with a page, asking for a signature. Taking the page, he began reading it, remembering that he had signed it before. This realization shocked him. As he read, a flashback of Yodobaru's burned face struck him, making him feel slightly sick to his stomach. He nearly vomited. Yodobaru noticed his pain and asked if he was alright, but Keiji couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. It couldn't have been just a dream. He was certain it was real. Yodobaru, sitting on the bunk above, asked if Keiji was feeling unwell and mentioned that they were heading out the next day. Keiji, hearing this, panicked and immediately returned to reading the book. Flipping through the pages quickly, he asked himself what was wrong with him. He reread the scene from the book where the detective assembled everyone to reveal the murderer, starting with casual conversation about how green tea was complimentary at the end of a meal in Japan. In his mind, he recalled every detail of the scene, yet he had read it just the night before their departure for battle. He found it implausible that he could have dreamt a segment of the novel that he didn't read before. Yodobaru went to see Keiji, who stood there blank, lost in thoughts about everything that had transpired in his dream. He wondered what had happened to him. Keiji thought it was his first time reading it, but it didn't feel that way. That morning, he had dreamt of being killed. He remembered his left arm being blown off, and in a state of shock, he considered that maybe it wasn't a dream at all. Holding the book, he questioned himself, wondering if it meant he had already died twice. In his mind, he acknowledged that if he stayed there, he would be sent to battle again tomorrow and face death once more. Yodobaru called out to Keiji again, but Keiji, without responding, immediately ran out of the room. Yodobaru asked where he was going, but Keiji didn't reply. He ran, feeling the need to escape anywhere, somewhere far away, where he wouldn't have to face that pain again. He feared that if he stayed, he would meet death once more. However, in his desperate attempt to flee, he collapsed, encountering a girl named Rachel Kisaragi, who was taking potatoes in a cart. Rachel apologized to Keiji as he put his hand on his bleeding head. She asked if he was alright, mentioning that he must have hit his head against the cart. Apologizing once more, she advised him to get his injury treated. Keiji reassured her that he was fine. Just then, Sarge appeared, questioning the situation. He asked Keiji if he was responsible, and Keiji confirmed it. After inspecting Keiji's injury, Sarge reassured him that it was nothing serious and advised him not to worry. Sarge informed Keiji that they would have a PT session later, but allowed him to skip it to get his wound treated promptly at the infirmary. Keiji acknowledged the instructions and waited for Sarge to leave before heading to the infirmary. As Keiji entered the room, he noticed the familiar announcement about 0900, which he had heard before. With that in his mind, he resumed running, leaving Rachel looking at him with confusion. After leaving the base's flower line, Keiji knew that deserters faced the risk of being shot. However, he believed that staying there would lead to his death, so he decided to make a run for it. The security guard at the US Army gate easily let him pass. Their duty was to eliminate any suspicious individuals approaching Rita, not to monitor young deserters. Keiji realized he must escape this place, so he accelerated his pace. Despite his heavy breathing, he assured himself that he would reach the town by continuing along this road. Once there, he could freely choose his next destination. As Keiji ran, he encountered an old man accompanied by a little girl and decided to stop. The old man remarked that he hadn't seen Keiji around before, prompting Keiji to look at him with surprise as he realized they were civilians. The old man explained that his granddaughter mentioned something unusual about the sea's color, so they came to observe it together. Keiji, feeling relieved that he was finally outside the base and within the absolute defensive zone, started to breathe heavily, thinking he was safe now. However, his sense of safety shattered when the old man's head suddenly separated, unleashing a fountain of blood from his neck. Shocked by the horrible sight, Keiji was further stunned as another laser swiftly sliced through the little girl's head. In utter disbelief, Keiji witnessed this, unable to trust his own eyes. As he turned to look elsewhere, he noticed a mimic ready to attack him. In a swift motion, the mimic unleashed a laser attack on Keiji's chest, killing him instantly. After dying, Keiji woke up again on his bed, hearing the same announcement about the Bozo area. Opening his eyes, he saw the same page offered by Yodobaru to sign. Frustrated, he got up and asked Yodobaru if he had a gun. Yodobaru confirmed and Keiji asked to see it. Yodobaru agreed but wondered when Keiji started liking guns. Handing over the gun, Yodobaru informed Keiji that it was loaded so he shouldn't point it at him. He advised Keiji to pack one of these when he became a corporal, as he was no better than a pea shooter against those mimics. Ignoring the advice, Keiji pointed the gun at his mouth, shocking everyone. Before anyone could react, Keiji shot himself in the mouth. As he died, he suddenly woke up again on his bunk, hearing the radio announce the high pressure covering the Bozo area. Frustrated and tired of hearing the same things repeatedly, he woke up without a seat and flipped through the book, wondering what was happening. He thought to himself that every time he died, time looped, and he returned to that morning with his memories intact. He wondered why it happened, but now knew that no matter how or where he died, he reappeared on his bunk every time. He guessed it seemed like it was the damn rule of this world. While looking at the book, he got up, and Yodobaru offered him the contract again to sign. Keiji took the contract page from him and asked what would happen if his first time kept repeating forever. Yodobaru looked confused and asked what that was supposed to mean. Keiji explained it like going back to the start in a board game or something. Yodobaru, intrigued, asked if it depended on whether Keiji was talking about having sex or going to war. Keiji clarified that he never wanted to repeat the Okinawa landing operation again, not even if they threatened him with a firing squad. Keiji seemed extremely tired, thinking about the firing squad, knowing he would come back even if he got shot. He wondered what Yodobaru would do if he found out about this. Keiji thought to himself that he was the only one in this time loop in the world, so he had to keep fighting against the fear of dying. He gathered courage and finally decided to go for it. If staying alive was the only way to fight back, then he would keep going until the very end. After gathering courage, he took a pen and removed the cap with his mouth, thinking about all the ways he had died before. He wrote the number 5 on his hand, symbolizing the number of times he had died. He looked at the number 5 on his hand, thinking that the small number was where his war began. While Keiji was in an ISO push-up position, he had flashbacks to his childhood when he loved pretending to fight against aliens. He always played the sacrificial hero, purposely jumping into the front line and letting his body be covered by the enemy's bullets. His friends would then avenge him, and his heroic sacrifice would inspire the humans to achieve victory. It was a selfish death game. However, now he thought it was a game no longer. He had experienced death a few times and he understood that actual death was nothing like pretending to die in a game. He realized now death was not just a sudden end. Suffering and agonizing before dying is a must. He apologized to himself, stating that he was not going to be a sacrifice in a real battle. There was no way he was going to let himself keep dying like that. He decided his objective was to survive that hellish battlefield, but a question arose in his mind. How? How was he supposed to deal with those monstrous mimics? While he thought about this, Yodobaru asked him to check out the US Special Forces and a small girl named Rita. Keiji looked at her, thinking she was the most powerful soldier. Yodobaru said she was the figurehead, but Keiji, in his mind, thought she was not just the figurehead. Questioning himself, how did he know that? He remembered when he died for the first time, he was convinced it was just a dream. But in that dream, he saw the way she fought. She was the soldier in gunmetal red, holding a massive battle axe. It was she who questioned if the green tea after a meal was free in Japan. He recalled struggling to breathe, and she told him that she once got into a sticky situation because she believed everything she read in a book. Ever since, she had made sure to ask the locals about such things first. She advised him to swallow his saliva and take a deep breath, but Keiji panicked, couldn't breathe properly. In a shaky voice, he asked if he was going to die. Rita confirmed it and told him her name was Rita and that she would remain by his side until he died. Furthermore, she told him that once he died, he would be helping her with a battery in his jacket and encouraged him to feel free to move on to the next world in peace. Keiji, while coughing, laughed a bit and called her terrible. During that time, cargo helicopters appeared in the air. The chief bleeder called from there, asking if she could hear him. He announced that they had successfully gained control of the perimeter of Server Alpha and to prepare to accept the pizza. During this, she held the axe firmly. Suddenly, a huge blast occurred near Keiji and Rita, and more mimics appeared in front of them. Holding her battle axe, she got ready to fight and told Keiji not to go anywhere. She asked Keiji to stay there and started fighting the mimics, striking them continuously. Keiji watched her, thinking about how fiercely she fought with her incredible power. He looked at her, the invincible soldier, and decided to get up, thinking that he was going to die anyway, so at the very least he would bring one mimic down with him. He stood up and tried to strike a mimic. Rita looked at him in shock as he struck the mimic, causing a blast that knocked him away. He then snapped back to the present, remembering that this was the first time he died. He looked at Rita and thought about how strong she was, with a strength befitting someone who had survived battles all over the world. He resolved that the best he could do was to take one down with him. While he was thinking this, Yonebaru told him that US Special Forces had just come to glance over them as they watched them leave. Keiji remained in shock, thinking she was supposed to come and start doing push-ups with him. He wondered if that didn't happen because he wasn't staring at her this time. He thought to himself that if he had looked at her, she would have come over, which meant he could change what happened in this world. Finally, he realized it was possible, even if the possibility of his survival was only 0.01%. If he worked at it, next time it might be 0.1%, and one day, eventually, he might succeed. The push-ups continued for a hard 3 hours. All the candidates were going to their rooms, including Keiji, who thought that next time he would look at Rita for a bit. He reached the entrance of the mess, thinking that though his memory stayed with him through each loop, he was still nothing but a novice soldier. He wondered how he could become stronger. Glancing inside the mess, he saw Bald Man and Yonebaru playing a game. The Bald Man said to Yonebaru that he was losing the same way he did last time, and pointed out that Yonebaru had completely missed the development earlier. Yonebaru looked angry upon hearing that, but then smirked on his move and said sometimes he just liked to go with his instincts. The Bald Man replied that sure, Yonebaru might rely on his instincts, but an amateur relying on instincts was going to lose 100 times out of 100. The Bald Man continued, explaining that knowing where and how to move and anticipating how the enemy would approach were skills Yonebaru needed to develop, and with enough repetition, anyone could master them. Keiji, standing at the door, heard all of this and was surprised. He realized he had found answers on how he could improve. Just like the game of chess, this was the art of war. The Bald Man completed his move, defeating Yonebaru. Keiji headed to the gym and approached Sergeant Feral Bartolome. He apologized for interrupting him and explained that he needed to discuss something. The sergeant, with his extensive military experience and status as the most senior veteran on the base, was someone Keiji respected. He asked Keiji if he seemed troubled because of the upcoming battle. Keiji thought about how the sergeant used to be an instructor for trainees, making him the ideal person to seek guidance regarding warfare. Keiji asked if Bartolome was going to continue training, to which Bartolome confirmed. Keiji then asked if he could train alongside him, but the sergeant straightforwardly refused. As Bartolome began to put on his shirt and walk away, he pointed out that Keiji's request was a bit much and asked if Keiji heard the saying, "cut to learn." He elaborated that it was a samurai principle. Defeat your enemy in combat and gain wisdom from the battle. Bartolome further said Tsukahara Bokuden and Miyamoto Musashi, master swordsmen in their country's history who engaged in countless battles and cut down countless people. Upon hearing Bartolome's words, Keiji was taken aback. Bartolome elaborated that through continuous battles, fighters gain true strength, with survivors learning invaluable lessons. Keiji absorbed this, thinking that engaging in numerous battles might be the key for him to grow stronger. He smirked, finding this concept fitting. Bartolome noticed his expression and asked what was with that face. Keiji quickly changed his expressions, apologizing. Bartolome, slightly disappointed, wondered what he was laughing at. Looking at his hand, Keiji said he would treat his experiences on the battlefield as training, letting them become a part of him. Bartolome agreed, and Keiji thought that his training on the battlefield loops every other day. He stood firm, thinking he could cut and learn as many times as he wanted, and he would raise himself to the level of Rita and the Master without failure. Bartolome observed Keiji, sensing something unusual in his expression, but unable to understand what had changed him. Nevertheless, Bartolome left and informed Keiji that they would be gearing up with top-tier equipment in 15 minutes, instructing Keiji to meet him there. Surprised, Keiji asked if they were truly going to gear up. Bartolome, annoyed, answered that he didn't anticipate a jacket soldier training without proper gear and commanded Keiji to quickly change into it. People believe that Rita was the savior of the world, but Keiji had a different perspective. The first time he went into battle, he found himself trapped in a strange time loop. This loop followed specific rules. 1. When he died, he went back to the morning before the battle day. 2. This happened no matter how or where he died. 3. There was no way out of this loop. 4. He remembered everything from each cycle even after death. 5. Nothing was predetermined. Events could change. To break free from the time loop, Keiji knew he had to become stronger and survive. This meant he had to improve his soldier skills. At first, he was just like any other new soldier, but as he kept dying and restarting, he learned valuable lessons each time. On his 12th iteration, he became a fearless soldier, charging at enemies without hesitation. Other soldiers were puzzled, wondering if he wanted to die. In Keiji's mind, it wasn't just about risking his life. It was a determination to keep moving forward. He trained rigorously with a sergeant, starting with mastering walking in a power suit. He recalled a moment when the sergeant told him to turn off the auto balance, despite Keiji's concerns about losing balance. The sergeant explained that relying on the machine meant being slightly slower, and in battle, every moment counted for survival. After numerous deaths and 12 retries, Keiji finally mastered running across the battlefield without hesitation. On his 12th try, he found himself surrounded by mimics, armed and ready for a fatal encounter. In an instant, they attacked, and Keiji woke up in his bed, holding a book. He wrote 13 on his hand, thinking about the type of weapons jacket soldiers carried. Among them, the 20mm machine gun stood out for its devastating power against humans, but proved ineffective against mimics, as did rocket launchers and RPGs. Only the tungsten carbide stake launched by the pile driver could seriously harm a mimic. Keiji examined it closely, drawing the attention of another soldier who questioned why he was there. Keiji explained that he needed a power suit for training. The soldier advised him to rest for the upcoming battle, but Keiji insisted. He knew the challenge with the pile driver. It was a melee weapon, meaning he had to get close to a mimic to strike. With determination, he prepared himself to face the terrifying mimics up close. The next day on the battlefield, Keiji spotted a mimic unaware of his presence. Seizing the chance, he moved in closer, but the mimic reacted swiftly and struck, killing him instantly. Keiji jolted awake in bed, breathing heavily. Yonebaru noticed his distress and asked him if he was okay. Holding his head, Keiji reminded himself to stay calm. He knew there was nothing to fear, not the mimics, not death. Yet he continued to die repeatedly in battles against the mimics, and the tally of numbers on his hand kept growing. On his 21st attempt, Keiji charged at a mimic and successfully killed it with a strike from the pile driver, feeling a rush of happiness. He realized this was his first mimic kill without sacrificing himself. Excitedly, he thought of it as a new beginning, marking his first victory against a mimic. In his mind, he warned mimics to take notice because he was growing stronger. Suddenly, another mimic appeared behind him, but Yonebaru arrived with his gun, shooting at the mimic. Keiji swiftly saved Yonebaru by sliding under the mimic and taking it down. He checked on Yonebaru's well-being and learned that more mimics were approaching from the east, being cautious. The other soldiers were amazed and confused at Keiji's sudden skills, wondering about his training and experience. Keiji, now armed with different weapons, had become a remarkable soldier, even impressing the sergeant, yet he continued to die numerous times, at least 46 so far. On his 47th attempt, Keiji observed the controlled area from his hiding spot behind the bushes. Two guards stood at the entrance, armed with M166 rifles as usual. He gazed at the gate, knowing what he sought was inside. Reflecting on the limitations of the pile driver, only usable 20 times, he checked the time, anticipating the captain's arrival within a minute. Keiji realized that no matter how skilled he became, he could only kill 20 mimics with a pile driver. Too many times he died because of running out of ammo. To survive, he needed a weapon with unlimited ammunition, making it crucial to meet the person in the warehouse. As the car approached, Keiji was ready for the guard's movements and emerged from the bushes, ready to act. He timed his movements as the car reached the fork in the road, and an elderly cleaning lady stepped out, diverting the guard's attention. Keiji took the opportunity to slip past unnoticed, taking advantage of the guard's brief distraction. Once inside, he located the girl he was there to meet, who was searching for her glasses. Startled by Keiji's sudden appearance, she jumped, and he quickly apologized for startling her. He handed her the glasses, and she expressed her gratitude. Curious about his identity, she asked who he was as she didn't recognize him. Keiji introduced himself as Kirya Keiji, and the girl introduced herself as Shasta Rail. Keiji explained to her that he had something important to discuss. The girl looked surprised, wondering why he wanted to talk to her. She felt honored that he considered her for something important. Keiji then gestured towards Rita's battle axe and requested her to make a similar one for him. Shasta double-checked if he meant a battle axe similar to Rita's. Keiji confirmed, pointing to the one hanging nearby. Shasta declined, mentioning that making such a thing on short notice wasn't doable, especially since she was occupied with repairs at the moment. However, Shasta was a smart person who had become a military technician after starting as a civilian. She had finished her studies at MIT, skipping some grades along the way, which showed how clever she was. She was quite short, measuring 152 centimeters and weighed 37 kilograms. Her eyesight needed just a little help with a prescription of 0.06 diopters for both eyes. Further, she was Rita's dedicated jacket engineer. Out of nowhere, Keiji pulled the chip from his pocket and asked Shasta if she wanted the special chip. Excited, Shasta rushed to grab it, but Keiji held it up high, making it tough for her to reach. She wondered how he got it and requested him to give it to her, but Keiji had a condition. He would give it if she gave him the battle axe. This surprised Shasta. She tried to explain that copying Rita was dangerous. Rita was the only one who could handle that battle axe, which weighed a whopping 200 kilograms. It was so heavy that swinging it could easily twist a jacket soldier in half. That's also why Rita didn't use an auto balancer. She couldn't afford any mistakes. She continued explaining that Rita didn't turn off the auto balancer. Her jacket simply didn't have one. Even among the top US Special Forces, Rita stood out as the only one without it, showing how unique she was. Keiji smirked, suggesting that getting rid of the auto balancer could be a good idea to lighten the load since he didn't use it either. This surprised Shasta, and she questioned if he believed he was as special as Rita. She emphasized that Rita was truly exceptional. She recalled their first meeting when Rita expressed gratitude for being born into a world of war, highlighting Rita's mindset. Shasta challenged Keiji, asking him if he could say the same, which irritated him. Seeing Keiji's expression, Shasta took her words back, clarifying that she didn't mean to imply she was scary. Keiji understood what she meant. He recalled a moment with Rita where she promised to stand by him until his end, showing how he perceived Shasta's intentions. Keiji explained to Shasta that she was easily misunderstood, but she was not a cold-hearted person. He added that he didn't want the battle axe because he wanted to be like Rita, but because his pile driver only had 20 shots, and having a weapon that didn't require ammo would be beneficial. He was open to any weapon, like a spear or cutlass, anything that would help him survive in battle. Shasta was taken aback, and Keiji emphasized his need for survival gear. He even begged Shasta, who jokingly called him a weirdo and noted how this reminded her of a similar conversation with Rita. Keiji smiled and felt honored that Shasta compared him to the Valkyrie, Rita. Shasta, knowing the battle axe was challenging to use, expressed her concern. Keiji reassured her that he had plenty of time to practice with it. Shasta playfully took the chip from him, mentioning she had spare steel to make something for him. As she started working, she commented that it was rare for someone to chase Rita despite knowing how strong she was. She noticed the number 47 on Keiji's left hand and asked about its significance. Keiji hesitantly explained it was like marking days on a calendar. Shasta guessed it must have held great meaning for him, maybe his girlfriend's birthday or something. Keiji corrected her, saying it represented the days since he died and obtained the battle axe. And during that, Keiji's weapon took shape, a massive battle axe similar to Rita's. Keiji, wearing his metal suit, gripped it tightly. He took a moment to breathe deeply before declaring that the next step was his training, facing death. Keiji swung the battle axe, quickly realizing it was heavier and harder to balance than he had expected. He tried to use it to kill the mimics while the sergeant was dying nearby. After a few swings, the axe slipped from his grasp and the mimics killed him. The cycle became his daily routine. Eat, train, and then die. Aside from training, everything had become routine for Keiji. He could get through the day with his eyes closed if he wanted to. The lunch lady, Rachel, always poured onion soup into his bowl, splashing it in the same way every time, burning Yonebaru's arm behind him. Everyone flirted with Rachel, praising the taste of the lunch. Keiji walked away without reacting, feeling sick of eating the same thing for 80 days. Still, he had to eat it to keep his energy up. Lowering his head because of a headache, he overheard another boy talking about Rita Vrataski, calling her a full metal bitch while she was also eating lunch. He checked the time. It was 11:40. Rita was sitting 3 rows ahead, eating her lunch silently without looking at anyone. As he watched her, Keiji realized he only got to see her because he was not eating right now. At 11:43, she dropped a bean, and at 11:45, she stuffed a pickled plum into her mouth. With tired eyes, he thought to himself that she acted like a child, even though she was 22 years old. He imagined she would surely look cute in normal clothes instead of her uniform. Suddenly, a man appeared beside Keiji, whispering, asking if he was having fun. Keiji, surprised by this first-time encounter, replied that it was a blast, like every day. The man, angry, asked why his face looked like he had been eating off a toilet brush. Keiji, keeping the same expression, wondered if the man just didn't like his face or something. The man angrily grabbed Keiji by the collar and lifted him up, scolding him. "Meals are one of the few pleasures we soldiers get to enjoy, and looking at your face is ruining my appetite." Everyone around started to wonder if there was going to be a fight. Rachel intervened, telling the man that he was going too far. The man replied, "But she's the one who says she's never seen anyone look so miserable while eating her food before." Keiji glanced at his reflection in his bowl and realized it was kind of his fault. His expression really did look that bad. Rachel tried to calm the situation by offering the man extra food, but he angrily refused, saying he wouldn't let this go. Keiji started to walk away silently, but the man shouted after him, demanding to know where he thought he was going. He tried to punch Keiji from behind, but Keiji's quick reflexes kicked in. He dodged the attack effortlessly and with his chopsticks, caught the piece of fish Rachel dropped, offering it back to her. The other soldiers around them started hooting, trying to pump the man on to fight Keiji. The man threw a punch, but Keiji dodged it with ease, thinking to himself that people who live second to second have no chance against someone like him. Yodobaru, excited, bet $20 on Keiji. Keiji remembered the sergeant's lesson about breaking down every second. The man kept throwing punches, but Keiji dodged each one without effort. He realized that time didn't actually slow down. Rather, he was able to break it into smaller and smaller parts. As he dodged, he got flashbacks of mimics attacking him, heightening his senses. He noticed the man's legs were wide open and prepared to take advantage of the opportunity, ready to strike back. Keiji noticed every weak movement of the man, thinking about how many times he could have killed him by now. He heard some of the boys urging him to fight back, but he realized that winning this fight would only cause more trouble and waste valuable training time. So he decided to take a light punch instead. Just as Rachel stepped in to try and stop the fight, the man's punch landed hard on Keiji's face, knocking him down. Everyone rushed over to check if he was okay. Yodobaru, disappointed, said that he lost $20 on the bet. A bit further away, Rita watched the scene unfold. She started to walk away, but she couldn't help but think about Keiji's movements, which she found impressive. She also noticed the determined look in her eyes, recognizing the gaze of someone strong. After a while, Keiji regained consciousness. Rachel helped him to sit on a chair and asked if he was okay and if he was hurt anywhere. Looking a bit injured and tired, Keiji reassured her that he was fine. Rachel, feeling grateful, apologized on behalf of the other boy, explaining that he wasn't really a bad guy. Keiji admitted it was his fault, saying he didn't realize his expressions were that bad. Rachel agreed, telling him he looked like he had just lost a friend. Keiji reflected on his last iteration, remembering how the sergeant got killed, which wasn't far from actually seeing a friend die. He assured her that he would be more careful next time. Rachel then asked why he held himself back. Keiji, a bit surprised, asked what she meant. Holding a soda, Rachel told him she knew he was stronger and it looked like he didn't want to punch back. With a sorrowful expression, Keiji said he got enough fights on the battlefield, which left Rachel a bit confused. She then asked if he had a girlfriend, and Keiji instantly replied, no. She asked if the battle was tomorrow, and Keiji confirmed it. She set her hair and said she was free tonight. Keiji looked at her as she sat on the chair and told him not to get the wrong idea because she didn't say this kind of thing to just anybody. Keiji stood up, apologized, and told her he wasn't the guy she was looking for. He started walking away, saying he had to train. After leaving the room, Keiji began to run, reflecting on how many other boys were interested in Rachel. She reminded him of the librarian girl from high school, a crush he never confessed. She liked mystery novels just like him. However, joining the army wasn't about seeking transformation through war's chaos. He was too shy to express his feelings even back then. Tears welled up when he shouted, "Sergeant!" The sergeant, noticing his sweaty face, asked what's up and if he was feeling unwell under hot weather. Tears lingered in his eyes, seeing him alive. He remembered the sergeant's words, "You only live once." Had that been true for him, he might have considered Rachel's offer. Nonetheless, he asked if they could train together. On his 99th try, Keiji held on for 45 minutes into the battle before meeting his end. He faced another defeat on his 110th attempt, surviving for 57 minutes this time. Seeing Yodobaru falter, he realized the front line was weakening. By his 129th iteration, Keiji was battling not just the enemy, but also a pounding migraine that started on his 50th iteration. Yet, he pushed through and lasted 61 minutes. Keiji was ready to face the battle on his 158th try, appearing stronger and more determined than ever before. Keiji charged towards the mimics, closing the distance to use his battle axe effectively. He started spinning the axe, killing mimics with single strikes, leaving everyone around him stunned. He sliced through the mimics, jumping and running, striking them down with precision. His comrades, impressed by his skill, confirmed among themselves if this was really Keiji, as they had thought his axe was just for show. The sergeant captured everyone's attention and ordered the 17th Company to focus on providing cover for Keiji from then on. Keiji became the center of their formation, and they ensured not to get in his way. Keiji stood firm, gripping his battle axe, surrounded by others holding guns. He reflected on how he was no longer a green recruit, running around at the mercy of the battlefield. Now, He was a seasoned killing machine, with blood running through his veins instead of oil, having survived countless battles. As he thought this, he noticed more mimics charging toward him. He leaped into the air and sliced through them all with a single strike. Meanwhile, a pilot informed the chief breeder that a Japanese battalion in the far north was approaching Server Alpha, and their movements were unpredictable. Keiji, holding his massive axe, started walking toward the mimics, attacking his comrades. With a swift strike, he killed a mimic instantly. The surroundings were filled with smoke, the rain of bombs, and the bodies of dead mimics. He approached his injured comrades who were alive but barely holding on. Kneeling beside one of them, he asked if he remembered with how many points they were beaten by them. The comrade, wide-eyed, looked at him in confusion. Keiji continued, "I didn't remember either, but I knew we won by a pretty large margin. Talking to you wasn't originally my idea, but you should swallow your saliva." The comrade, annoyed, asked, "What the hell are you talking about?" Keiji supported his injured comrades, noticing they seemed to be in better shape than he initially thought. They called him a show-off, sarcastically labeling him an annoying bastard. Keiji laughed and they fist-bumped, wishing him the best of luck. He then started running with his massive axe, memories flooding back of when Rita comforted him during his weaker moments. She calmed him down by talking about green tea, a concept that seemed out of place on the battlefield but provided a surprising sense of peace. Suddenly, a huge blast erupted in front of Keiji. He spotted a silhouette with a massive axe and guessed it might be Rita. Bombs rained down around her, indiscriminately reducing everything to dust. He wondered if that zone would be okay. Rita Vertaski, clad in deep crimson, lifted the soldiers' spirits just by being there. Everyone loved her, calling her the goddess of the battlefield, and referring to her as the Full Metal Bitch, a nickname said with the utmost respect. Keiji wondered if he had fallen in love with her too. He closed his eyes, thinking that as he was now, he wouldn't be able to truly love someone anyway, and any time they spent together would be washed away by the loops. Keiji moved forward, spotting another mimic. He recognized it as the one he fought during his very first loop. With determined eyes, he told himself that now he would show it just how strong he had become. As he got closer, Rita noticed him and greeted him, which confused Keiji because it had never happened before on the battlefield. This loop diverged from the others. As Rita initiated a different conversation, she asked him how many loops this made, catching Keiji off guard. In the state of Illinois, in a small town with a population of 4,000 people, a land of fair winds and wide open skies, lived a young goddess of war, the Valkyrie. This beautiful home was where Rita grew up. She was an average student and hated celery and green peppers. One day when she looked sad, her father asked what was wrong. She didn't answer, but her eyes filled with tears. Her father asked if her mom had scolded her again. Rita was really good at horseshoes, and he winked at her, promising to take her to town later. She pretended to cry because she wanted to go to town. Despite the town's small population, Rita was like any other kid among the 200 million citizens of America. They entered a jewelry shop where the jeweler greeted them. The father asked the jeweler if he had some good beans, while Rita, smiling, found the jewelry beautiful. They heard a news report on the radio about the UDF quarantine division. The report stated that the quarantine division had been forced to withdraw from the island of Hawaii and had returned base in San Francisco. The jeweler showed something to her dad, saying it had arrived in the last shipment yesterday. Her father hoped the mimics never reached as far as Pittsfield and wondered what would happen next. He mentioned that some scientists believe the mimics were some kind of alien life form, but since they couldn't communicate with them, the battle would likely continue until one side was wiped out. With excitement, the jeweler asked if he used to practice jiu-jitsu and if he could do something about the mimics. Her father chuckled and said he was getting older now. That was a long time ago. He asked Rita if she wanted to join the UDF while she tried on a necklace. The jeweler asked if she had her father's blood. The man confirmed it, saying she was not going to join the army because their town was too remote. With a smile, she replied that she loved this place. That night, Pittsfield was covered in heavy snow, bringing a cold greater than previous winters. Rita got up from her bed and glanced out the window, noticing the snowfall. Suddenly, she saw a monster right outside and heard her father's voice at the door. She looked shocked as her father grabbed her hand and ran. She wondered what was going on as he took her out of the house and ordered her to get into the secret basement. She remained in shock, and he told her to stay hidden and not come out. She couldn't believe what was happening. While she sat in the basement, she noticed her mom, who was bleeding from her stomach and nearly dead. The monsters wandered around the house. Her father crashed his car into the mimics, but they didn't die, and even the car got dented. They started attacking the car, and her father was shocked, wondering what these things were. Rita realized that the creature attacking them was a mimic, a deadly enemy she had only heard of before. Despite her shock, she stood firm, but the mimic's immense power led to her father being fatally wounded. Rita looked at her father, smiling through the pain, urging her to survive. The military arrived, and Rita assured her mother that they were there to rescue them. Rita witnessed the devastation caused by just 3 mimic scouts, with over half the town destroyed and 1,500 lives lost in a mere 3 hours before the UDF arrived. After losing everything, Rita was sent to live with a distant relative. Once she turned 17, she became eligible to volunteer for the UDF. However, being underage, she stole a refugee's passport to appear older and joined the UDF. With nothing left to call her own, Rita's sole wish was to eradicate every last mimic from the planet. 6 months later, she officially joined the army, carrying the tragic circumstances of her birth with her as she entered the loop of war. The mimics landed on the land, turning it into a desert. The sky changed to a cloudy green, and the things they ate turned into something harmful for life on Earth, but useful for life on another planet. Life always looked for a suitable place to live, just like humans cleared forests and farmed the land. They thought about where to build their homes and how to make them comfortable. It was like their DNA changed to fit the environment, which was how life evolved. Rita joined the UDF and within 6 months became part of an elite company. During training with the platoon leader, Arthur Hendricks, he noticed she seemed off. Arthur, known for his special forces expertise, had striking features with blonde hair and blue eyes. He mentioned an interesting fact about nomads in China mixing animal blood with tea, linking them to legends of vampires in Europe. Rita listened quietly, not showing much interest. Arthur, sensing her disengagement, asked if she found his story boring, to which she replied that she was fine. It seemed he deliberately changed the subject afterward. Rita noticed a strange mimic that attacked her suddenly. In an instant, she found herself back in the shower, confused about what had just occurred. Stepping out of the shower, she realized it was the day before the battle and wondered why this loop started when she killed the odd mimic. On her second attempt, she faced the same mimic again, questioning if she would return to the shower by defeating it. Testing her theory, she shot the mimic with her gun, only to find herself back in the shower once more. This repeated in her third iteration, leaving her puzzled about how to break the cycle. By her 12th attempt, she observed that the unique mimic seemed crucial to ending the loop, but its guards increased with each iteration, complicating her task. She noticed that one guy didn't die in an earlier loop, but she ended up back in the shower again, realizing her 20mm rifles weren't enough against the numbers of mimics. Knowing she'd just keep dying, she started studying research papers and results to find a solution. Shasta informed her about reports stating that the mimic's thorny armor was evolving. While a pile driver was still a prototype, they were working on it. Rita expressed her need for a weapon that didn't rely on ammo, one that could eliminate every last mimic on the battlefield. She finally uncovered the secret to the mimic's strength. It lay within this loop. They learned from previous fights, evidenced by how many reinforcements were strategically placed. Realizing they could manipulate time and fight repeatedly, like resetting a game to correct mistakes, she understood that wars didn't offer such kindness. If this was their strategy, there must be a logic to the loop. She defeated the mimics, believing their secrets were now hers. With determination and her massive axe, she declared she'd never die or lose, remembering her father's last moments. Rita grew wary of seeing the captain become a father in every loop, each time offering her congratulations with a tired face. She felt annoyed hearing the same congratulations repeated over and over. After congratulating him once more, she stepped back, her headache worsening. She wondered why this headache intensified with each loop. She came across a report on the mimics, which stated that they emitted a type of signal called tachyon, a particle faster than light with the ability to travel through time. After reading about the tachyon particle and its time travel capabilities, she wondered how the mimics used it to create loops. Rita kept walking, lost in thought, and suddenly collided with Shasta, causing Shasta's chips to fall to the ground. Shasta shouted, anxiously inspecting the chips to see if they were damaged. Rita, a bit shocked, wondered if they were really that important. Shasta explained that these were external memory units for the jackets, so of course they were important. Curious, Rita asked what that meant. Shasta explained that the chips recorded information on each and every soldier on the battlefield, tracking changes to their bodies and how these affected them. From the way they moved to the patterns in their attacks, every single action was recorded in the external memory units. Rita held one of the chips and asked why they needed something like this. Shasta explained that the data was uploaded to the UDF servers to be analyzed so they could improve their strategies. Rita realized that past data was used for the next battle, similar to what the mimics did. She confirmed this with Shasta, who agreed and added with a smile that Rita's data was crucial since she was their ace. Shasta was backing everything up in case the servers went down. Hearing about the backup, Rita was shocked. She thought about the mimic with the antenna, which called the shots during battles and acted as the server for the time loop. She realized that there must be backup mimics with the same ability. Rita understood she had killed the main server mimic many times, but the loop continued because the backups were still alive. She concluded it wasn't just one with an antenna, but an entire network. She finally understood that to break out of the loop, the entire network of mimics needed to be destroyed. With her suit on and her massive axe in hand, she faced the same monster again. She told the mimic that she must be tired of seeing her face again and again, which is why she was there to end this. First, she destroyed the antenna of the mimic server. Next, she massacred all the mimics used as backups. Finally, she destroyed the server itself. She noticed that the loop didn't restart. On her 211th iteration, she finally succeeded. Rita broke out of the loop and, looking at the sunshine, she said to herself that she had survived and she was alive. When she reached the town, she learned that the captain had died. She was shocked when she came back and people were present there, crying for him. She thought that in the end, he was just unlucky. With an expressionless face, she realized that the captain never died in any of the previous loops. She understood that this was what it meant to be human, and that day brought a painful realization. This was war. Rita understood that in a time loop, saving one person might mean another death. War didn't allow for anyone to survive. The grim reality made her see death as a ruthless force, beyond anyone's control. After the battle in Florida, a team began studying the time loop phenomenon. Rita's body, especially her brain, underwent extensive examination due to the repeated exposure to tachyons, causing deterioration. The loop likely started when she accidentally struck down the mimic server. For Rita and humanity, this was fortunate. As an irregular with the ability to loop, Rita became a crucial weapon against mimics worldwide. Through 211 loops, she grew stronger, becoming humanity's beacon of hope. Her determination and strength earned her the title of the Valkyrie, the goddess of war, fighting relentlessly alone. In the Sky Lounge at the Flower Line base, watching soldiers train while sipping her tea, Rita said that there was more than one person who knew the loop. The day before the operation to retake Koto Iushi Island in Japan, Rita sat inside the plane reading a novel. After a short flight, the UDF finally landed in Japan. As Rita entered the military area, the Japanese soldiers looked at her in surprise, whispering to each other, recognizing her as the Valkyrie who had taken down over 100 mimics in the Battle of Florida. Rita made her way to her assigned area, glancing at the food provided. However, mimic loops lasted about 30 hours each, and Rita would loop once per battle. In the first iteration, she would determine casualties to create more favorable circumstances the second time around. No matter who died, she would never loop more than once. To prepare herself for the coming fights, it became her habit to withdraw herself the day before the battle. Rita glanced out the window at the clouds, talking to herself about the war in Japan, knowing she would loop once tomorrow. She remembered reading in a novel that green tea in Japan was complimentary after a meal and wondered if that was true. Looking at the book, she decided to go without thought for the battle. Every battle since, Rita had imitated Arthur's habit of starting pointless conversations to ease her nerves. She remembered Arthur saying random things like asking if it was true that Alaskans used to eat raw meat for the vitamins, or mentioning that the hot winds blowing in the desert were called Ghiblis. Every once in a while, Rita would think that if someone had an answer to a question she had not yet asked, it would mean that person had already experienced the battlefield of tomorrow. It would mean someone other than her was looping. But since breaking out of her first loop 3 years ago, she had yet to meet anyone like that, despite fighting many battles all over the world. She had no choice but to continue fighting on her own. This was her conclusion, but the 3 years still held their fair share of hope. As she looked sadly at the soldiers training below, she felt a headache coming on. She felt the burden of looping, the loneliness of her unique experience. While looking at the soldiers, Rita thought to herself that it was standard practice to let their bodies rest a day before the battle. So why were they training so hard? Standing there, she wondered why she was even there when she usually kept to herself the day before a fight. She'd noticed a strong, intense look from Keiji and was taken aback. She had never seen eyes like this, as if he had been through hell and back. Feeling a headache was coming on, she wondered what she was trying to say. Determined to understand, she approached the major and asked to train with them. As she exercised beside Keiji, she asked why he had been staring at her. She asked if he needed something. Keiji replied that this wasn't the right place to talk. Confused, she wondered why she felt such a strong urge to talk to him and what it could be about. After training, Rita stood alone and watched Keiji walking towards her. She noticed how comfortable he seemed in his uniform, but she could tell he wasn't a new recruit. The way he moved, shifting his weight, suggested he was experienced in piloting a jacket. She spotted the number 159 on his left hand and asked him about it. Keiji responded by saying that he had an answer to a question she would ask him tomorrow when he lay dying. Confused, Rita looked at him, and Keiji explained that in Japan, green tea after a meal was complimentary. Their eyes met and they shared a moment of silence. Tears welled up in Rita's eyes as the two of them stood together in a world of their own. Rita, struggling to hold back her tears, looked at Keiji, who remained expressionless. Finally, after more than 3 years, she had met someone like herself. They were both caught between hope and despair. After a moment of silence, as Rita was almost done wiping her tears, Keiji spoke. He explained that the numbers on his left hand indicated which iteration of the loop he was experiencing. Rita nodded in acknowledgement, grateful for this new connection. The next day, at the northern tip of Kodo Iushi Island, Keiji swung his massive axe, taking down mimics with precision. The sergeant ordered the 17th Company to back up Keiji, but warned them not to interfere with his movements. Keiji knew this battle could be the final one, and he asked if Yonebaru and the sergeant would return if they fell today. It was a make-or-break moment. No more chances for do-overs. It was the last stand. Keiji eagerly awaited Rita's arrival, and soon enough she appeared, taunting the mimics and declaring her presence. Rita thanked Keiji for waiting, and the commanding officer, taken aback, referred to her as the bitch of the battlefield. Rita introduced herself confidently as Rita Vertaski and informed the commanding officer that she was here to borrow Keiji. The officer allowed Keiji to join her, but warned him not to distract the troops with unnecessary antics. Rita was puzzled by the figure of speech, but the commanding officer clarified it for her. As Keiji and Rita departed, Keiji expressed doubt about their odds against the mimics. Facing a horde of enemies, they both wielded their massive axes and engaged in combat. Keiji recalled how he had learned to survive by observing Rita's fighting style. Despite receiving distinct training as soldiers, their experiences in numerous battles had molded their techniques into strikingly similar styles, prompting some to mistake them for twins. During the intense battle, Rita instructed Keiji on their crucial task. He had to be the one to destroy the server. She checked if Keiji remembered the procedure. Keiji affirmed his understanding. Rita explained that although she had destroyed the server in loops 2 through 158, Keiji was the one who accidentally initiated the loop by killing the server the first time. This made him the target of the mimics and trapped him in the loop, subjected to repeated deaths. In the heat of battle, Keiji finally identified the mimic server, the entity responsible for pulling him into the loop. Fueled by anger and determination, he lunged towards it, evading its attacks with swift reflexes. He hoped the mimic was prepared for what was coming. With a decisive strike, Keiji destroyed the antenna and promptly informed Rita of their success. Rita, too, reported progress on eliminating the backups. She assured Keiji that the long loop was finally over. However, Keiji abruptly woke up in his bed, stunned and frustrated as he realized that the loop had not been broken. He marked 160 on his left hand, questioning why the day had not yet ended. On his 160th iteration, Keiji saw Rita's tears once again. He looked at her sadly, feeling guilty for making her cry. He introduced himself as Keiji, and as she wiped her tears, she introduced herself as Rita Vertaski. Keiji smiled, noticing that everyone was staring at them. Seeing his expression, Rita asked what was so funny. Keiji shrugged and said it was nothing, just that this was a lot of fun for him. Rita called him a weirdo. Suddenly, Keiji grabbed her hand and told her that at 2 o'clock, they would make a break for it. Holding her hand, he started running, taking her towards the sea. Rita asked him to let go, and Keiji, feeling a bit embarrassed, apologized and released her hand. As he looked at her awkwardly, he thought about how she didn't know anything about him. As long as the loop continued, every time they met would be their first. She started walking forward. Keiji called the place a barren wasteland, but she disagreed, saying she liked the atmosphere. She mentioned that it was like the place where she grew up. As they both looked at the sky, Keiji asked if she liked it. Gazing at the clear sky above the ocean, she admired the beautiful scene and said she liked the color of the sky. Keiji noted that her jacket was red. She remained silent for a few seconds, then started walking to the other side, asking Keiji to forget that version of Rita, saying that wasn't really her. but Keiji insisted, saying that wasn't true. The Rita Vertaski he knew was that kind of person, which left her a bit shocked. She stopped and looked at him. Keiji apologized for speaking so bluntly. She smiled and said she was sure that they had this conversation in a previous loop, but he was the only one who remembered it. Keiji apologized again and said there was still a lot he wanted to ask her. Rita smiled and moved closer to Keiji, asking if he knew what was going to happen next. She said it was much more fun to ask about the future than to go through the loop herself. Keiji told her it wasn't fun for him, but Rita said it was fun for her. She explained that she had gone through hell on her own this entire time, so now it was his turn to suffer a little bit. Keiji looked at her in shock, then said they were slightly ahead of schedule, but their next stop was the cafeteria. They walked to the dining hall, and Rita remarked that she hoped he was in the mood for some Japanese food. Holding a Japanese pickled plum with her chopsticks, she asked what it was. Keiji informed her and thought to himself that it was 11:15. Usually, she would be eating that at 11:45, so they were a bit early. As she put the pickled plum in her mouth, her face twisted as if she was going to vomit. Keiji noticed her same reaction as always, but then she suddenly said it wasn't sour at all. Keiji told her to tone it down since there were all kinds of people around. She found it really delicious and started eating more and more, insisting it wasn't sour at all. Keiji smirked, watching her. They started a competition, eating more and more pickled plums. Everyone around them looked on, wondering what was going on. As they realized the situation, they began rooting for them to eat more. Keiji wondered when was the last time he had eaten food like this or laughed like this. All this time in the loop had made him forget the joy of being with people, hearing their voices and eating with them. Such simple, everyday things could bring such happiness. After dinner, they both sat together, talking. That night, Keiji opened up to Rita about everything. About Yonebaru who didn't know how to shut up, about the sergeant who was always training, about the colors of their jackets, about coffee, and about so many other things they hadn't had the chance to discuss earlier that day. He cherished every moment spent with her and didn't want to lose the day they had shared. For that reason, he knew he had no choice but to overcome tomorrow. The next day, when Keiji woke up, he noticed there was no book in his hand and realized it wasn't his bed. Confused, he got up and saw Rita preparing coffee. She greeted him, saying it looked like he slept well. Keiji remembered they had come there yesterday and ended up falling asleep. Feeling a bit sad, he mentioned it felt like it had been about a year since he had a good night's sleep and thought sleep was nice. Rita smiled slightly and remarked that he sometimes said dumb things, then asked if she understood what he was saying. Suddenly, Keiji noticed that Rita was only wearing her underwear while cooking something. He asked about the smell, and she responded that she knew he had a good nose. When he opened the bag, he immediately recognized the aroma. She told him it was their morning coffee. Keiji, still confused, asked if that's what coffee smelled like. She explained that it was the scent of roasting all-natural coffee beans, and asked if he had never had any before. Keiji admitted he had only tried synthetic stuff, but he looked excitedly and confusedly at the coffee beans in his hand. Rita, with a blushing smile, said she got them as thanks after freeing a village in North Africa, adding that being queen isn't all bad every once in a while. Keiji, looking at her like a kid, pointed out that it smelled great. She then showed him how to grind the beans. Watching her, he said that once the fight was over, he would treat her to some of the best green tea as thanks for the coffee. Rita, in a questioning tone, repeated, "Once the fight is over?" Keiji looked at Rita and assured her that everything would be fine and that the battle would definitely end because they had each other. Rita smiled and agreed, saying she was sure he would be able to end it. She started teaching him how to prepare the coffee, explaining that steaming the beans first was crucial to get the right flavor. As Keiji smelled the beans and appreciated the aroma, she began to explain the next step. Suddenly, a mimic's javelin crashed through the window. Both of them remained shocked as they saw hordes of mimics invading from the south side. Keiji, totally stunned, said this had never happened before. Rita, noting that it was a javelin-proof glass, touched Keiji's face and told him that the mimics used the loops to win, which meant they had decided they would lose unless they did this. She reminded him that as jacket soldiers, their duty was to destroy the mimics, so nothing had changed. Keiji agreed and they both started running to confront the enemy. As they ran towards the battle, they encountered Shasta, who explained that her jacket and battle axe were in the Japanese workshop. Rita thanked her for the information with a smile, and Shasta advised her to be careful. She gave Rita access to the Sky Lounge, warning her that it was tougher than it looked. Rita assured her that she only needed one thing from her, to keep anyone out of the room except for her or Keiji. Shasta, looking a bit shocked, was asked by Rita for a promise that she'd chase away the president if he showed up. With determination in her voice, Shasta assured Rita that she'd handle it. Rita expressed her gratitude once again, telling Shasta she was counting on her and thanking her for everything. Rita looked a bit sad as she prepared to put on her jacket, thinking about how they didn't have time for their coffee that morning and how they needed to finish it before it got cold. Keiji, noticing her expression, told her not to get too carried away. She replied that reheated coffee never tasted as good, and the natural stuff started molding after 3 days, which had been one of her greatest regrets in Africa. Keiji smiled and asked if that was really a regret, to which Rita responded with a smile. As they continued talking about the coffee, they both got covered in their metal suits. Rita, with determination in her voice, said that this time, the loop was going to end. Yodobaru walked into the garage, shocked to see Keiji in the metal suit. He told Keiji that he had started to worry and asked what he thought he was doing there. Keiji replied confidently that he was there to fight. Yodobaru's eyes widened as he asked Keiji if he was crazy since it wasn't the right time. He explained that the base was lost and if they didn't run, they'd be in big trouble. Keiji, gripping his axe tightly, said he knew but believed in himself and Rita. Yodobaru disagreed, saying they couldn't make a difference and the base didn't need them. Keiji, still confident, said he knew that, but he needed the battle. Yodobaru was shocked and asked if he meant it. Keiji confirmed he did, but didn't expect Yodobaru to understand. Rita and Keiji started running as Yodobaru shouted from behind, warning them not to say he didn't warn them. They looked at the base destroyed by the mimics. Keiji smiled and said, "Let's dance now." Rita, holding her massive axe tightly, said, "That's enough joking." She ran toward the mimics and began striking them. Keiji thought about how he had watched Rita on the battlefield all this time and could tell what move she intended to make. Noticing her movements, he saw she needed a place to plant her foot. He ran to support her, offering himself as a stepping point. He told her to look for the next target and crush it. Keiji smiled as he watched Rita, thinking he could support her without words or gestures because they were now a single unit. The sergeant kept using his gun against the mimics, but Keiji told him it was useless. Then Rita and Keiji appeared with their massive axes. Rita shouted that her squad established a defensive perimeter at the hangar and asked everyone to follow her. The soldiers looked relieved and happy to see Rita finally there. The sergeant glanced at Keiji, wondering if it was really him. Keiji said he was happy to see the sergeant alive. The sergeant was shocked, watching Keiji destroy so many mimics. As he was about to question him, Keiji told him to focus on getting through the enemy lines first. Keiji and Rita combined their efforts, spitting their axes together, leaving everyone astonished. They knew about Rita's abilities, but they were surprised to see Keiji using the massive axe so skillfully. The sergeant shouted, telling everyone it was time to show the mimics that this was their base. He ordered everyone to follow Rita and Keiji. The soldiers agreed and began fighting the mimics with high morale. Rita informed Keiji that it had been 2 hours since the battle began, and the situation was starting to settle down. She told him it was time to kill the server. She asked Keiji if he remembered how to do it. Keiji confirmed that he did, recalling his 159th loop when he attempted it but failed. He wondered if Rita had another plan to break out of the loop. He kept fighting to find the server mimic. After clearing out some mimics, he finally spotted it. Running towards the server mimic, he thought this time he had to succeed. He charged at it, destroying all its antennas. Suddenly, his expression changed, looking a bit shocked. Suddenly, Rita attacked Keiji, shocking him. His eyes widened as he looked at Rita, wondering what she was doing. Rita countered by asking him what he thought was happening. Angrily, Keiji asked why she was trying to kill him. Rita explained that when a mimic sensed danger, it sent a tachyon signal back to the past using its antennas. She went on to say that humans got caught in the mimic's time loop because their brains picked up the signal. Keiji was stunned, unable to believe what he was hearing. Rita continued, explaining that the signal was the main cause of their migraines. She told him that this was why the loop repeated last time, even though he had destroyed the backups. Simply put, she said that as long as Keiji existed as a backup antenna, she couldn't escape the loop. And as long as Rita existed as a backup antenna, he couldn't escape the loop. Keiji stood completely shocked in front of Rita as she told him that only one of them could escape the loop alive and the other one would have to die. After saying this, Rita gripped her massive axe firmly and started running at Keiji, striking at him. Keiji dodged her strikes while another military member arrived at the scene. Rita told him to stay out of it, warning that she wouldn't be responsible for what happened if anyone got in her way. She continued attacking Keiji, who tried to fend off her strikes, still looking shocked by her sudden determination to kill him. His metal suit looked a bit absurd now. He thought to himself that he had died so many times that he no longer feared death, so it didn't matter if Rita killed him. However, he had vowed to himself the day he wrote the number 5 on his hand that he would fight against the world to survive. He gripped his massive axe tightly, ready to attack Rita, thinking he didn't mind being defeated as long as he put everything into this fight. Determined not to give up, he began to fight back, and they engaged in a fierce battle, both wielding massive battle axes with extraordinary skill. Both combatants were injured, their metal suits getting progressively more damaged, but they continued attacking each other without pause. Keiji thought that Rita must be feeling the same way he did, so he must face her head on. He leaped into the air to strike, but Rita, with her exceptional skills, managed to dodge his attack. The fight continued fiercely, neither willing to back down. To Keiji, Rita was undoubtedly the goddess of the battlefield. He had learned his skills by watching her, while she had always fought alone. However, Keiji knew every move of Rita's from observing her in battle so many times. As they fought, Rita's metal suit began breaking apart. Keiji looked at her in shock as her eyes filled with tears. She told Keiji he had won, admiring his strength. As he moved closer to her, she revealed that she had known this for a long time, ever since she first received the mimic signal, because the battle always ended the same way. Hearing this, Keiji's eyes remained wide open. She told him he was the one destined to make it out of the loop. Keiji wondered if Rita had known she was going to die all along, and he started apologizing, feeling guilty. Rita told him there was no need to apologize. He had won. Sadly, he asked her if they couldn't live together, repeating this loop so they could be together forever. Rita pointed out that he would be meeting a version of her every day who didn't know him, but he told her he didn't care. She touched his face and advised him to save the human race, telling him he had to break out of the loop before what happened to her happened to him. She urged him to end this while he still could. As she spoke, she started coughing heavily, and Keiji looked stressed. Rita told him that there wasn't much time, and if he had something to say, he should say it now. Keiji, expressing his love, proposed to her, saying he wanted to stay with her until she died. Rita said she was glad to hear that, but didn't want to die alone. She mentioned that it was already sunset and called him a beautiful, sentimental bastard, expressing her hatred for the red sky. As she lay in front of him, she slowly started losing consciousness and eventually died. Those were the last words she ever spoke. After that, Keiji destroyed the Mimic server and mopped up the remaining enemies. Despite his heroics, he was thrown in the brig for dereliction of duty and recklessly ignoring the orders of his superior officer. However, 3 days later, they decided to pin a medal on him, the same medal that only Rita had received in the past. Fellow soldiers asked him who taught him to fight like that. The sergeant also appeared with the same question. Keiji told him that he was the one who taught him. The sergeant, not believing him, asked him to stop kidding and mentioned that he heard Keiji was being transferred to the US Special Forces because they needed someone to take the Valkyrie's place. Keiji went to the workshop looking for his jacket and suddenly spotted Shasta there. She looked at him apologetically. Keiji showed her his jacket with Killer Cage written on it, remarking that she kept a close eye on it, but someone did anyway. Keiji smiled, thinking he now had a call sign of his own, and told Shasta there was no need to worry. She gave him the key to the Sky Lounge that Rita had given her. Keiji thanked her for passing it on and asked if she knew why Rita painted her jacket red since it wasn't her favorite color. With a sorrowful expression, Shasta explained that Rita said she wanted to stand out, wondering why anyone would want to stand out on a battlefield. Keiji thanked her for the information, thinking it made sense. Rita wanted to be an easy target, so all the attacks would focus on her. As Keiji started walking out, Shasta asked if he was an old friend of Rita. Keiji remained silent, making Shasta wonder if she should have kept quiet. However, with a smile, he told her they had actually only met the day before the fight. Keiji then walked towards the Sky Lounge. The air was stale and Rita's scent was already fading from the room. He went to the bed and thought about how strong he had become after being in so many battles. He promised her that humanity would never fall as long as he lived and breathed. Looking at the hot coffee pot, he said she was the only girl he wanted to protect, and now she's gone. He held the cup in his hand, taking a sip, and thought that red was her color and hers alone, so it should rest with her. He resolved to keep going the way he had decided. Looking at the sky, he thought about the color of the sky, the color she told him she loved when they first met.